Now, in light of this, we look at the power of PR in politics as various political parties and independent candidates wind down their election campaigns. Have they been effective from a PR and advertising point of view? We ask. Moeng is the founder of DonValley Reputation Managers and columnist. A very good evening to you, Solly. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us. So for the uninitiated, I'm wondering, what is PR in politics exactly? How do you differentiate from what is understood as spinning? As we've just seen there, the governing party saying it's demanding to know from Eskom why the lights are off. And some would say, well, you should know, but they'd probably argue the separation of power. So take us through all of this.
Well, okay, good evening and thank you for this invitation. There's no such thing as PR in politics ahead of elections. It's all spin. Especially if you spend time listening to a party that has been in power for, that has been responsible for governance and government for many, many years, speaking as if in the third person about its own people, as if we're going to see what they're going to do. We're going to interview them after the election. It's not once people get elected, how are you going to interview them and decide, okay, you're not good enough, you're out. So there's a lot of spin there, but it's a pity that I think for me the painful thing in South Africa is that there are still too many people who believe the spin, who fall for the spin, who fall for the lies. Even they don't connect the dots. South Africans still do not connect the dots, and that's where we go. So political party leaders can just go around and say whatever they want, and they know that they're going to get. It's like throwing a net into the ocean. Some people are going to fall into the net. And
so, Solly, you said something very interesting here. You're saying they believe the spin, they believe the lies. And my next question was going to be, is spinning embroidering and is exaggeration lies? So words are very important. How you use them. So what should people know and understand when we talk about PR, especially PR in politics?
Well, the thing is, in PR, political parties are supposed to be telling potential voters what they've done, especially those who've been in office for a while, what they've done in the past, what has not worked, and what they're going to do to correct what hasn't worked, what they're going to do differently going forward. But in South Africa, even people who have failed come on and say, yeah, we're going to do this, they keep saying the same things over and over again, and people still fall for it. So the PR, it's really meaningless when you speak to people who don't connect the dots, people who don't read the manifestos, people who don't really compare the core of what each political party is offering. They just listen to the beauty of the poetry of the promises being made in front of them, and they fall for it. And that's the thing. And the emotion is still very strong in South African politics. People don't vote because they believe the words. They vote because you are who you are.
So the interesting thing, some people would say, as you say, South Africans are kind of ahistorical about some of these things, but others would push back and say this is the role of the media. It's the media that's failing the people. They should be reminding people of the failures, of the successes. So I'd like to hear from you, your observation of the various campaigns, who clearly had a professional PR strategy that worked well, and also just looking back at past campaigns and what we're seeing now. Has there been a marked change?
Look, each political party, especially those which are already established, have got some kind of shower hanging over their heads. The DA gets accused of being a racist party. There are still people who believe that if you don't win elections, apartheid would return. The EFF had this campaign recently where they had young people going around saying, we want things now, we want jobs now, we want education now, we want health, etc. I think that was an awesome campaign. I really loved that campaign. But then again, will people look at that campaign in isolation of other things that are hanging around the EFF and the leaders of the EFF? When Malema says we are all Africans, we must open the borders in a context where there are so many people flooding into South Africa without papers, are the followers of Malema going to say to Malema, wait a minute, you can't be asking for us to open our borders and let people come here unchecked when we already have difficulties with people coming here? That's what I mean by connecting the dots and not taking specific, isolated messages from politicians in isolation from everything else that they do and that they say elsewhere.
I suppose it also comes down to the responsibility of making people understand, like when you're talking about that, there's migrants, there's refugees, but let's take that for instance, and I want to talk about PR and how it influences internal and external affairs. So when we talk about public relations, we automatically think about the public, but we know that there are fissures within the party. So how do you use PR for an effective political organization?
Well, I mean, look, the aim of PR is, as you say, public relations is to put together a set of messages that communicate to your stakeholders, not to the media, the public, other people who are relevant targets of your messages, about what you're doing, what you're intending to do. But those messages have to be truthful. Normally, they have to be truthful, they have to be verifiable. But a lot of times people get away with saying things that are not verifiable, that are not truthful, because the audiences many times do not really fact check. Fact checking in South Africa is not a big thing. And we can't blame the media for this. In any case, whenever the media comes up with truth, it gets many times, depending on whom the truth is facing, the media gets accused of playing somebody else's agenda. The media gets accused of being racist. The media gets accused of being against the ANC, the EFF. So it's the poor media in South Africa gets blamed for all sorts of things that it shouldn't be blamed of.
So let's then delve into that. Just how dirty can you get in your PR campaign and strategy? So is there evidence, for instance, that parties and candidates are getting the right exposure at the moment? And if there is a crisis or the various crises that parties are experiencing, is it down to the individual or the strategy when something goes right or wrong?
Look, you have a lot of very, well-spoken leaders in South African politics. Malema, for instance, whether one likes him or not, is a very well-spoken, very courageous, he has this stage presence, if you want. So people tend to forget everything about Malema when he stands in front of people to say, well, people would love to love Ramaphosa. They would love him to win. People would love to consider Ramaphosa as an entity that's different from the African National Congress. But we know that's not the truth. So we form images in our heads of leaders, of what they say or what they represent, that suits us, and without connecting the dots to everything else about those leaders. So those leaders get away with saying stuff that they get away with. The difficulty is with new people, new candidates who are not known, who don't have the resources to expand their footprint in bigger parts of the community or in more media. So those are the ones who have to work really, really hard to get themselves out there, to get their messages out there, to get themselves listened, and to make the connection. The other guys who are established just have it easy because their names are out there already. So all they need to do is just to say, I'm going to be there, and the crowds will be there to listen to them.
All right, so Moeng, thank you so much for your time and insights. He's the founder of DonValley Reputation Managers.